Environmental Justice. I'm the director for the Office of Environmental Justice at the Department of Environmental Conservation, and I'm also the chair for the Climate Justice Working Group. I'm joined today by my colleague, Michael DeRomio, and the Assistant Director for Energy and Climate at the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, and Tyler Picard, the Project Manager at NYSERDA for this effort. So just so folks know, this is an informational session on the Disadvantaged Communities Investment and Benefits Guidance that was released for the public. This is not a public hearing, so we're not going to be taking public comments on the draft, and we're not going to be taking any testimony. This is just an opportunity to see the presentation and for people to ask questions on the draft guidance to help gain some clarity on how benefits of investments will be reported. Next slide. So the draft guidance is going to act as a blueprint for reporting energy efficiency and clean energy programmatic investments by the state, by state entities in disadvantaged communities, and it's going to advance consistency and transparency in complying with the Climate Act's equity provisions. Next slide. So as you see here, this is an overview of the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. The Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act of 2019 implemented New York's most aggressive climate actions to date. This includes the mandate for New York State to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 40% of 1990s levels by 2030 and 85% by 2050. The law also requires that 70% of our electricity be produced from renewable energy resources. So this statute is groundbreaking with its focus on climate justice and equity. The Climate Act created the Climate Justice Working Group to consult on such items as the scoping plan and to establish the criteria that we use to identify disadvantaged communities across the state. So this allows for equitable and public process in how New York State meets the Climate Act mandates for these historically overburdened communities. Oh, sorry, it just went blank for a second. Apologies. And to make sure that they receive their fair share of environmental benefits and to be considered in the decision-making process. Okay, next slide. So the next section we're going through is the Investments and Benefits Directive. Sorry, something just happened to my computer. Sorry about that. Investments and Benefits Directive. So the Climate Act requires that all state agencies, entities, and authorities, to the extent practicable, have to invest or direct 35% with a goal of 40% of the overall benefits of spending on clean energy and energy efficiency programs, projects, or investments in the areas of housing, workforce development, pollution reduction, low-income energy assistance, energy, transportation, and economic development. So that's what this section deals with. Next section, please. Sorry, next slide, please. So the Climate Justice Working Group met over the course of 3 years to develop and analyze data sources to develop the disadvantaged communities criteria. The criteria are 45 indicators of population characteristics and health vulnerabilities and environmental burdens and climate change risks. The criteria was finalized in March of 2023, and it includes 35% of census tracts across the state. It also identifies low-income households that are at 60% or below the state median income for the purposes of energy allocations, regardless of whether or not they're physically located in a disadvantaged community. So in a geographic DAC. So whether or not they're in those boundary lines or in those census tract lines, if they are a low-income household at 60% the SMI, they are considered to be a disadvantaged community for the purposes of this policy. Next slide. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mike DeRomio. Michael?
Thanks, Alana. Hello, everybody. Like Alana mentioned, my name is Michael DeRomio. I'm the Assistant Director for Energy and Climate Equity at NYSERDA. It's good to be with you today. I'm going to speak with you now about the main topic for today, which is the guidance that is out here, the draft guidance to state agencies in New York for how to account for clean energy investments and benefits to disadvantaged communities per the Climate Act that Alana was just referring to. But before we do that, I did want to give some of the background that you can see here. The Climate Act, as Alana mentioned, there is a requirement for 35% with a goal of 40% of the benefits from across the state's different agencies, the different clean energy investments across the various agencies, that there is a requirement and a goal that those go towards disadvantaged communities that have been identified by the Climate Justice Working Group. NYSERDA has worked with multiple New York State agencies to inventory the types of guidance, or I'm sorry, the types of programs that should be captured as part of this accounting effort. That has informed what we're presenting you today. NYSERDA's, that interagency work has led to this guidance that we're talking about today, which was initially released on January 3rd and will be open for public comment until April 5th. So we do very much welcome any comments on that before that, by that time frame. Next slide, please. Okay, so jumping into the content a bit more, I first want to outline which investments are actually captured by this guidance or this statewide accounting framework that the guidance is focused on. First off, the investment must be made by a New York State entity, authority, or agency. That includes federal funding that comes through state agencies as well. Number two, it must be a clean energy or energy efficiency programmatic investment. In other words, that it is a program investment that is focused on improvements, installing equipment, et cetera, or incentivizing those types of activities. It can be a standalone program. In other words, it's just a clean energy focused program, or it can be a component of another program, for example, a transportation program that has a clean energy component tied to it. The third piece here is the investment must be place-based. What that means is that the project must be able to benefit a defined local geographic area. In other words, it should be something that could easily benefit a local community. I'm going to dive more into this in the following slide. And then finally, along the lines of what Alana just mentioned, as part of the disadvantaged community criteria, an energy investment can also be counted as towards the disadvantaged community benefits if it benefits households, and specifically those households that are at or below 60% of the state median income within the state of New York. I do want to note before moving on that the dollars spent on applicable investments noted here are what count towards the 40% goal and the 35% requirement from a compliance with the Climate Act perspective. However, and we're going to talk more about this, there are other disadvantaged community benefits, what we call code benefits, beyond the dollars spent that we are very interested in, know are very important to capture for both place-based and non-place-based investments. But those will be captured separately in our accounting. Next slide. So along this lines, what you can see here outlines a distinction that's important for what we're proposing in this framework. As proposed, the accounting of dollars invested, which again is the compliance metric for the Climate Act, would be focused on place-based investments only, while investments being made to state or system-wide types of initiatives would not be included in the dollar investment accounting. Place-based investments, what does that mean? Are, again, those that can reasonably prioritize or be directed to a specific geographic area, so a particular community. They therefore can deliver benefits to a specific community or household, again, because households, if they're income eligible are included as part of disadvantaged communities. So for example, a household energy efficiency program can directly engage and serve households within a disadvantaged community, and that the benefits from that program will directly benefit those residents. So that is a place-based, would count as a place-based investment. In comparison, state or system-wide investments are investments that are more designed to meet the overall needs of the state's energy infrastructure or other statewide objective. So these are projects that will provide a benefit to all of New York State, regardless of where they're located. So for example, a utility scale, and what that means by utility scale, we mean a large scale type project that a utility might develop for plugging into the grid and providing power to customers. That type of a project will provide energy to the grid no matter where it is located. So that project will still, no matter where it's located, will provide power into the grid where that will then be distributed and serve the grid needs. So we're excluding these types of activities from the compliance accounting of disadvantaged community dollars because they do not directly benefit individual communities. This is also because the investments may need to be strategically placed based on a particular need that the utility grid may have and cannot just be placed anywhere. So it must be something where it can be directed to disadvantaged communities. In this case, when it comes to serving the grid, that might not be, there might not be that flexibility there. So all of that said, as noted earlier, we are working across the state government agencies to ensure that disadvantaged communities receive a similar share of what we call the co-benefits of these projects where possible. So for example, using that large scale renewable energy project example I mentioned a moment ago, we are asking developers of those types of projects to commit to workforce development goals, as well as procurement of local goods and services, for example, from disadvantaged communities where possible. Okay, so that's the very high level. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to my team member at NYSERDA, Tyler Picard, to provide more detail on the co-benefits accounting methodology that is being proposed here. Tyler?
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tyler Picard, and I'm on NYSERDA's Energy and Climate Equity team. My main role on the team is to directly assist the Climate Justice Working Group with establishing the criteria for identifying a disadvantaged community, as well as working to develop the guidance that is presented here today. So as Michael noted, in addition to capturing the dollars invested as the compliance metric, New York State will also be looking to capture multiple co-benefits from these investments as well. We have a table on the right here showing those co-benefits, and for the categories we have electricity and fuel savings, participant bill savings, health benefits related to outdoor ambient air quality, as well as employment impacts. These co-benefits are not considered to be part of the mandated benefits, but are tracked in addition to the dollars. The table here represents the co-benefits we know we can begin tracking immediately across all agencies for our initial report. Some considerations for these co-benefits to keep in mind are that they must be trackable across all agencies for a cohesive report, and that for this first report at least, they must be co-benefits we can immediately begin tracking. Lastly, it's worth mentioning we see this reporting process as a continually evolving process, so we would like to hear from stakeholders to understand what additional co-benefits you would like to see tracked moving forward. Next slide, please. So through inventorying the various state programs that would fall under this accounting structure, we did discover that there are several types of investments that do not neatly fall within the framework reviewed here. For these type of investments, we have proposed several methods for counting their attribution towards the goal. Excuse me. So for regulated multifamily affordable housing, for example, outside of disadvantaged communities, program administrators do not typically have a great way to know the exact income of all residents. And this is because income within this housing often uses mixed thresholds, but also because area median income is used to determine eligibility, which is not aligned with state median income, which is used in the disadvantaged communities criteria. As this targets households, the individual household component of the disadvantaged community criteria may come into play. Therefore, we have worked with the state's affordable housing regulator, Homes and Community Renewal, as well as the New York City affordable housing regulator, Housing Preservation and Development, to estimate the percentage of their portfolios, their affordable housing portfolio that is at or below the 60% SMI threshold within the disadvantaged communities criteria. Each agency determined that this figure to be approximately 40%. Therefore, when we're accounting for investments in regulated multifamily affordable housing buildings outside of disadvantaged communities, we are recommending that 40% of the investment dollars are counted as going towards the 40% goal. Moving on to our next example, another investment type that we believe may need to be considered differently is community solar. We believe the primary benefit of these projects is to the individual subscribers and not where the project is located. We also do not want to incentivize the placement of community solar within disadvantaged communities if disadvantaged community residents will not be the primary beneficiary. Therefore, where subscriber data is available, we propose counting these investments by the percentage of subscribers that are from disadvantaged communities. Where subscriber data is not available, we recommend allowing agencies to use a percentage disadvantaged community subscriber approach based on a sample of subscribers to these projects. Next, for community-wide investments, this option will be limited to the use of projects that provide funds to a municipality directly for community-level projects. Municipal boundaries do not align with census tracts, which are how disadvantaged communities are defined. Therefore, the state performed an analysis that looked at the estimated percentage of disadvantaged community populations within each municipal boundary, and we recommend that those percentages be used for these investments. So for example, if a $10,000 investment is provided to a municipality with a 50% disadvantaged community population, we would count 5,000 of those dollars as going towards the 40% DAC mandate. Our next example is workforce development programs. For workforce and training, when an individual is targeted as part of the trainings, we are recommending that agencies track investments based on where the trainee resides. So trainees must reside within a disadvantaged community for it to count towards the goal. For workforce development that is focused on building an organization's training capacity, however, we are stating that the investment should be tracked at the location of the organizations or training centers. Next slide, please. So the content covered here represents a bulk of what is written within the guidance, but I also wanted to provide everyone with a draft timeline. The public comment period will be open until April 5th. After that, the state will look to see what comments can be implemented immediately and which may take some time to implement in future rounds. The process for reviewing these comments will take us into May, and we hope to release the finalized guidance to agencies into late May or early June. Agencies will work to populate a data collection template and submit that to NYSERDA in July or early August, and NYSERDA will work with agencies to QA/QC this data, and following that, we will look to publish a report in September. Next slide, please. So with that, I believe I am going to pass it back to Alana to open us up for Q&A.
Let me unmute. Great, thanks, Tyler. So I put in the chat for folks that if you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the chat right now, and we will look to respond to you immediately. We'll give you all a minute in case you're typing. Okay. Well, if there are no questions, thank you for everyone for jumping on today. We know people are very busy, so we thank you for attending this informational session. Please, sorry, I see something in here. Yes, I do see a question. Sorry. We will not end it because there is a question. Okay. a moment, sorry. Is Todd is oh, sorry, just a moment. We will let NYSERDA, we did get a question in the chat. Within the DAC structure, sorry, how does hydrogen production fit in? We'll let someone from NYSERDA weigh in. And also we have a question about when will the slide deck be forwarded after the presentation? So will we be making the slide deck public after the presentation? We can absolutely look to post this on the disadvantaged communities website. That's at climate.ny.gov for folks who want to see it.
I can, Alana, take the question about hydrogen.
Great.
As best
Thanks,
I can here. So yes, so within the scoping plan, and you know, there are efforts that different agencies can undertake to, as long as it meets certain criteria for what is considered clean hydrogen, then that is considered potentially, which is renewable energy powered production of hydrogen. That is within the scope of what is considered part of the implementation and getting to our zero net carbon emissions goals. So there are initiatives, for example, here at NYSERDA that are focused on clean hydrogen, and that would be included if it's place-based, again, as part of the compliance metric, or if there are co-benefits, if it's not place-based, then that would also be included. I hope that answers the question. And if it doesn't, please do enter more in the chat. I'm happy to try to get more information, but I'm not the hydrogen expert here.
Todd says thank you. Okay, are there any other questions before we close things out today? If there are, please enter them into the chat. Okay, like I started to say before, thank you everyone for jumping on. We will, please remember that the public comment period, as you see on the slide, ends on April 5th. So please get your comments in to us before then at justice@dec.ny.gov. If you have any additional questions, or please feel free to send them to us, and we hope to hear from you soon on this draft. Thank you for joining us. And we'll make sure that this is posted on our website.